Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's James Kuzno coming to you from ProPix TV. We're here with a special report as Donald Trump has early left the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, Canada. It could have something to do with the current war and actions going on between Israel and Iran. Of course, we know that crisis has been heating up, and there have been retaliations by Iran back to Israel. They have been hitting residential areas as well as highly populated parts of cities. It has not been just strikes on the military installations or military facilities. This is coming in light after an odd but confusing press conference that Donald J. Trump held with Mark Carney earlier today. At the G7 summit, when Donald Trump was directly asked what it would take for the U.S. to get involved with the Israel-Iran conflict, he had stated clearly that he did not wish to discuss it, but also at the end of that statement said, "We'll see." Now, accordingly, the U.S. military has been redirecting tankers and other equipment over to the Middle East. With that, the UK has also reportedly sent different planes and equipment going with the Royal Air Force to the Middle East as well. Now, Iran has made threats that they will not just isolate their retaliation towards specifically and only focusing on Israel. They are talking about the potential of hitting certain regions that would shut down the oil supply coming through that area, as well as targeting other countries. So this, again, is breaking news from the G7 summit with Donald Trump abruptly leaving ahead of schedule. It is questionable whether or not the U.S. will be involved in this latest round of attacks against Iran, but it is quite possible. At this time, of course, Israel has been going after their uranium enrichment and nuclear programs. One of the alleged facilities that Iran does not have the capabilities of taking out, that Israel does not have the ability to take out in Iran, is in a deep mountain bunker. For that, they would need the bunker busters, and in that regard, the only option would be for the U.S. to send in their aircraft with the bunker busters that would be capable of taking out those facilities. So again, it is questionable at this point why Donald Trump left the G7 summit so abruptly. But if you also factor in the fact that Donald Trump was earlier today sending out truth social posts and warning others that that they should evacuate Tehran, the capital of Iran, immediately, then it really begs to question whether or not the U.S. is going to stay out of this action and just be there as a backup to provide further intelligence for Israel in their attacks to Iran, or if, more likely as it seems potentially at this time, the U.S. is going to be involved in the next round of attacks on Iran. That, of course, is going to bring the U.S. directly into conflict and into a war, which Donald Trump has adamantly stated that he would not do during his presidency. He has spoken about being trying to bring peace to the world, the Middle East, as well as the Ukraine-Russia conflict. However, again, today, when he was at that press conference, he was asked very varied questions that came back with just either untruths or that he was confused about how he was answering. Because at one point he was asked about China and whether they should be brought in and have a seat at the G7. He said that he would welcome it. But they don't like to talk. And then started going on about how only Vladimir Putin talks to him and none of the other G7 leaders because his feelings were hurt with being kicked out of the G8 in 2014. Again, he got confused mixing up China with Russia, went from answering the question directly about China and veered off, continued as he thought he was talking about Russia and Vladimir Putin again. He seemed to be quite defensive in protecting Vladimir Putin today, and it was just a bizarre press conference that Mark Carney finally stepped in and pulled the plug on. at one point. And even during some of the press conference where he was blaming Justin Trudeau for expelling and being a part of having Vladimir Putin and Russia kicked out of the G8, he had no concept that that happened prior to Justin Trudeau being Prime Minister in Canada. It was actually the Conservative government prior to Justin Trudeau that had their involvement in that. Once again, though, at this time, it is reported that Trump has left abruptly from the G7 summit. We'll have to watch and see if this actually takes some further wings, no pun intended, but if it takes further action of the U.S. getting involved with the dispute between Israel and Iran. And we'll have to watch as that unfolds this evening and possibly into tomorrow. Again, because he had been hinting for people to leave Tehran, as he also stated earlier today, when asked what it would take for the U.S. to get involved in that war, he did not deny that the U.S. was going to get involved. He instead said he didn't want to talk about it and that we'll see. So that was his response earlier today. And then he started on his Truth Social once again, warning people to leave Tehran immediately, and then had to leave the G7 summit abruptly and without schedule. So again, it leaves a lot to wonder what's going on. At this point, as I said, he seemed a little confused and out of his element this morning at the press conference. But then with the other things going on, he could have been preoccupied during that press conference with what was happening in Iran and with Israel. So again, it could have been just preoccupation of his mind, focused on other things besides that press conference. We'll have to see once again what is playing out there. In other news from the G7 summit, of course, we know that the meetings are off to a start. Donald Trump and Mark Carney seem to be focused on a 30-day period to have a trade deal done between Canada and the U.S. And at one point, there was also talk with Donald Trump acknowledging that a lot of work needs to be done, but he did bring other people with him to negotiate trade deals and to try and work out some of the differences between G7 leaders and the U.S. So again, we'll watch and see closely as to what comes out of that. It did not appear that the EU was focused on getting trade deals done this week at the G7. They seem to be more focused on other issues, such as the various SAFE programs and military rearmament of the European Union. And that seems to be a big part of what they are focused on, as well as other issues like technology, stability, and also different alliances with other nations when it comes to expanding and broadening trade agreements outside of the United States markets. So again, a lot's going on at the G7, some great meetings going on. Narendra Modi will be arriving at the G7, and there are a lot of protesters, pro-Khalistan protesters that are lining the roads between Calgary and Canmore. There are a lot of Khalistan flags being flown and a lot of activity. This again is in relation to various different viewpoints and opinions, but mostly about the sovereign nation of Khalistan being formed in India and the allowance of a referendum vote there to decide yes or no on that, whether the people support it or if it is what Modi calls it, a fringe movement. Now, judging by the hundreds of thousands of people that showed up in Vancouver, as well as other locations around the world, to vote in a referendum, it definitely appears to be much more than just a simple fringe movement, as Modi likes to call it. With that said, of course, this morning, Mark Carney also put Modi on notice, stating right up front at the opening that they will be dealing with transnational repression, and that will be a very big topic over the next several days. Now, with Narendra Modi being there and protesters, of course, there is the viewpoint that there should be discussion about the transnational repression and the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar just over 2 years ago in Surrey, British Columbia. At this point, of course, the India government, their law enforcement are cooperating with the Canadian police, and that's the RCMP. And they are apparently cooperating together in looking at this investigation, but how forthcoming India and their law enforcement agencies are with information, we don't exactly know. Once again, folks, you've been watching a special report here from ProPix TV. I am James Kuznow, coming to you from the ProPix TV studios. Leave your comments in the comment section, and thank you for watching. We will be back later this evening for our regularly scheduled live chat with James at 11 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll see you then. Thank you for tuning in.